way back at university, so where I was between 18 and 21 years old, I hadn't thought about work and career until maybe my second year. I was 20 years old, and I was attracted to doing social work actually for a number of reasons. I'd, one was that I'd met a social worker at the same college that I was at, a social work student rather. So he was studying social work, and I think before then, this was 1980, 81, I'd maybe never even heard of social work. And this guy Steve was a very charismatic guy, um, very socialist guy, and he talked about social work and what he was doing on practice placements in such a way that I became interested, basically. So that was my first time I'd heard of it. And so as I started to think, well, I've got to start thinking about life after university. What do I want to do? And so
So
that was
what were you studying at
I
that
was studying
time?
mathematics. I was studying
Uh-huh.
mathematics, yeah.
Okay.
And so my politics affected me very strongly. So I was socialist, and I was a committed, firebrand young socialist who wanted to change the world. And I wanted my work to be a part of that. Really, I wanted it to fit with those ideas and those principles. And so I didn't. Not many jobs occurred to me as fitting with that, really. And I thought about teaching, but doing mathematics, I wasn't interested enough in mathematics, and I didn't really fancy the idea of teaching mathematics at a school level. And I maybe I wasn't bright enough, or I hadn't worked hard enough to study mathematics further myself academically, but I wasn't interested enough in it. So with teaching ruled out of the way, and having come across the idea of social work, and having had a few experiences that made me think I was quite good with people, and maybe good at helping people, social work occurred to me. And so I did a year's voluntary work after I left university. So I spent a year doing full-time voluntary work in Liverpool, in England, and doing a variety of social care type jobs or tasks or roles, and I liked it basically. And I thought, yeah, this fits for me. And I met some very interesting people, met some very committed social workers, um, and yeah, I sort of saw social work back in the early '80s as applied politics almost, and or a personal practice of socialism. That's a very idealistic way of seeing it. I came to see it very differently later, but that's how I saw it back in the early 1980s. And so I decided to apply for a social work course to train as a social worker, and I had to get a place on a course. You had to have pre-course experience, so I had to keep on doing other jobs in this field. So I ended up training to be a social worker when I was about 25 years old. I started the course, so I'd worked for 3 or 4 years. And some of that work was very influential on me later and ended up influencing me becoming a solution focused therapist. Because one of the jobs that I did before my social work course was in an adolescent psychiatric unit in Macclesfield in England. And there was a family therapy team. This was in the mid 1980s, 85 to 87. And there were some social workers and nurses in this unit who did the family therapy work, and they were influenced by the MRI and Milan family therapy in particular. And so the first time I know I'm jumping ahead now with some of your questions, but the first time I saw Steve DeShaze's name was on books at the library of this unit back in the mid 1980s. So I now know that I must have been looking at the book's patterns and keys because clues wouldn't have been published by then. Um, yeah, so my entry into helping work the seeds were sown way back in university while I was doing mathematics, and then I ended up training as a social worker, and I qualified in 1989 when I was 27 years old. So then I was a trained, qualified social worker.